So President Trump brought back his old playbook of fake populism at the State of the Union. Take a look.
Another historic trade blunder was the catastrophe known as NAFTA. I have met the men and women of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New Hampshire, and many other states whose dreams were shattered by the signing of NAFTA. For years, politicians promised them they would renegotiate for a better deal, but no one ever tried until now. Our new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the USMCA, will replace NAFTA and deliver for American workers like they haven't had delivered to for a long time. I hope you can pass the USMCA into law so that we can bring back our manufacturing jobs in even greater numbers, expand American agriculture, protect intellectual property, and ensure that more cars are proudly stamped with our four beautiful words, made in the USA. Tonight, I am also asking you to pass the United States Reciprocal Trade Act so that if another country places an unfair tariff on an American product, we can charge them the exact same tariff on the exact same product that they sell to us. Both parties should be able to unite for a great rebuilding of America's crumbling infrastructure. I know that Congress is eager to pass an infrastructure bill, and I am eager to work with you on legislation to deliver new and important infrastructure investment, including investments in the cutting-edge industries of the future. This is not an option. This is a necessity. The next major priority for me and for all of us should be to lower the cost of health care and prescription drugs, and to protect patients with pre-existing conditions.
Okay, so first to that last point, the pre-existing conditions point. His administration is backing a lawsuit that takes away protections for pre-existing conditions. See, this is the kind of classic Trump doublespeak that allows him to keep fooling the 30% of the country that'll never abandon him and, gets the rest of people in the country pissed off at him because they know it's not true. His administration is backing a lawsuit that gets rid of the protections for pre-existing conditions. So for him to go out there and pretend like he's in favor of it, no, he's just trying to save his ass politically because he knows that that's an issue where you can't take the other side. I mean, the polling is so overwhelming on that issue that they're not even daring to cross that line. So it's over 90% of Americans that say we should protect pre-existing conditions. And so now he's out there like, me? What? The Republicans? What? No, we're totally for protecting people with pre-existing conditions, Brett. Pre-existing conditions, Brett. So just understand what's really going on behind the scenes as he pretends like, he's on the right side. If he was on the proper side and he meant it, he would not back that lawsuit. Then he goes on to talk about, the lower cost of healthcare. We need lower cost healthcare, and we need cheaper prescription drugs. Hey, dude, listen. Bernie Sanders has been proposing an amendment for years now, which allows us to do drug reimportation from Canada, and that basically cuts the price almost in half and makes our prescription drugs so much cheaper for everybody to afford. And this is an idea. It's not a radical idea. It's an idea that people have known about for a long time. Allowing Medicare to negotiate for cheaper drug prices with the pharmaceutical companies is another idea that all these presidents have been saying they support, but then when push comes to shove, they allow the pharmaceutical companies to keep screwing people over. So those are two ideas right there that you can back right now that would get cheaper drugs. But he's not doing it. Why? Well, listen, we told the story. He had one meeting with big pharma lobbyists, and he immediately changed his position. He said, no, we will not be allowing Medicare to negotiate for cheaper drug prices because Medicare is perhaps even more unfair than the pharma companies. He was doing the populist rhetoric and saying we need cheaper drugs, and then he had one meeting with pharma lobbyists, and he totally flipped. He could have said, I back Bernie Sanders' amendment. He didn't say it. By the way, he also put Alex Azar as the head of Health and Human Services. You know who Alex Azar is? A former executive of Eli Lilly who price gouged when he was at Eli Lilly. So the guy he put in charge of bringing us cheaper drug prices, he has literally price gouged on drug prices. And then also, if you want cheaper healthcare, Medicare for All is the way to do that, just so you know. Every other developed country has one version or another of single payer, and they pay about half what the U.S. pays, and they cover everybody. So we know how to do it. It's just a matter of you actually wanting to do it, but you don't want to do it. In fact, Trump wrote an op-ed not that long ago slamming Medicare for All, even though before he became president, there were, I think, 6 different occasions where he said he supports a single-payer system, a system like Canada, a system like Scotland, he said. He told a story about his buddy who went to Scotland, he got hurt, he went to the doctor, he left, and there was no bill. So he totally flipped on that, and here he's just saying he wants cheaper drugs and cheaper healthcare and lower costs of healthcare, and he's not delivering. He could support very specific policies, but he doesn't do it. Then on the crumbling infrastructure point, listen, we've seen he only proposed one idea on this, and that idea was basically a giant privatization scheme for our infrastructure. So in other words, and a lot of this because Gary Cohn was behind the scenes. Gary Cohn took a massive exit bonus from Goldman Sachs, and then millions and millions of dollars, and then he was the one pitching, hey, why don't we privatize a lot of our infrastructure and hand it over to Goldman Sachs? So his one idea that he had proposed was privatize large swaths of our infrastructure, turn it over to Goldman Sachs, and then they'll upgrade it. So the idea that he's really for an awesome Green New Deal or New Deal or really rebuilding our infrastructure in a way that makes sense, he's just not. He's for privatization schemes. Now, then on the tariff idea, I actually like that idea. However, just understand that Donald Trump, he loves to give protectionist rhetoric and he loves to do pseudo-populism, but here, let me give you an example of how we know he's not the real deal on this stuff. Donald Trump, if he wanted to, could have signed an executive order on day one as president. The executive order would say, Made in America means actually made in America. So, in other words, previous administrations have said, for the federal government, they only are able to buy American goods. So, for example, let's see, you see some federal law enforcement, okay? They're usually driving like a Tahoe. Why? It's an American car, American-made car. So, if we're the federal government, we only give business to, businesses from America. And that makes perfect sense. Why should our tax dollars go towards, buying goods that were made elsewhere and not, growing the economy here and helping our working people here? Well, Made in America, there are provisions in that which basically say Made in America includes America, but also all of our top allies. So in other words, if something's made in Israel, it's considered made in America. If something's made in Saudi Arabia, it's considered being made in America. I don't know how many things are made in Saudi Arabia, but you get the point. Things can be made overseas, but as long as there are allies, we consider it made in America. So in other words, it's not made in America. So Trump could have signed an executive order on day one. In fact, the drafts already existed. I remember reading the article on this and going, holy shit, what an awesome and simple, easy concept to just sign this executive order and immediately help grow our economy and help our working people. He didn't sign that executive order. He didn't sign it. Instead, he did a symbolic Made in America week, which is nothing but symbolism. It's not actual concrete policy. If I was president on day one, I would sign that. Made in America means actually made in America. Boom, boom, boom. We're done here. And then, then you go out and you brag about it because who doesn't agree with that from America? So, even though sometimes he talks a good game on trade, the reality is he doesn't walk the walk. He just talks the talk. Now, then we get to his slamming of NAFTA. See, this is important, guys, because I just need everybody to understand his fake populism is not going to go away. Even though he has not at all been a populist president, his fake populism is not going to go away. So this gets to people underestimating him, Democrats underestimating him, because there is this conventional wisdom emerging on the left, particularly in elite DC circles, that, and he's obviously going to lose, and he's completely beatable, so anybody will do. Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, Mike Bloomberg, you name it, they'll beat him. Easy. And listen, that's not true. I think that any half-decent Democrat will beat him, because the polls do show that Trump is struggling like a motherfucker right now. We just covered a story the other day. Abysmal poll numbers. Abysmal poll numbers. But understand, if it's not like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard, you're rolling the dice. Because here's what I know for sure. Donald Trump is going to make his case and make it as aggressively as popular. And he might lie endlessly. He might mislead endlessly. But just understand, he's going to make his case in a way that's going to convince all of his base is not going to abandon him. And how many independents is he going to chip away at? How many people in the Rust Belt is he going to chip away at? Because if he keeps doing this fake populism, the fake populism will beat a totally non-populist Democrat, a totally elitist Democrat. And I don't think, the usual suspects of the corporate Democrats have any idea how to run a campaign, and I think that's already been proven. Look at some of their launches. Look at Kamala Harris's launch. Unity, democracy, freedom. These aren't just words. Yeah, they are. They are just words. What do you mean? That's exactly what those are. What policies are you tying them to? Kamala Harris and Cory Booker got a slight pushback, just a little pushback on Medicare for All. Immediately walked back their support for Medicare for All. Immediately. That ain't going to fly. You think a guy like Beto O'Rourke, who apologized for calling Ted Cruz Lion Ted, you think that guy's going to be strong enough to debate Trump, as Trump's going to fucking smash his skull into the pavement and then do fake populism all day long, as Beto O'Rourke tries to say, I saw Hamilton last week, and it was a wonderful musical? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So the fake populism isn't dead, and you need to beware. Because don't underestimate him again, and they're already doing it. Even though his poll numbers are abysmal, granted, but if you run a corporate Democrat against him, it's going to be fucking, he can win. Because, by the way, you think the corporate Democrats know everything I'm breaking down for you right now? Here's another fact. 93,000 jobs have been outsourced under Trump's first year in office. So, Mr. I'm running on stopping outsourcing, 93,000 jobs were outsourced. That was worse than Obama. Obama had 87,000 jobs outsourced. You think any corporate Democrat can tell you that fact? Of course they can't. Of course they can. Because what do they run on? This president is bad. And he doesn't represent America well. And Russia controls this administration. That's what they run on. In other words, fucking nonsense. That's what they run on. So if you can't make a coherent case against him and stick to policy, you can lose. So, and the final point is this. As he's still railing against NAFTA, which is wonderful politics, what he's not telling you is he did NAFTA 2.0, which is almost exactly the same as NAFTA. In fact, some of the provisions are even worse. Some of the provisions are just giveaways. Like he spoke about intellectual property there and patents. Yeah, what he's not telling you is he did a massive giveaway to Big Pharma in NAFTA 2.0. A lot of provisions of TPP were slipped into NAFTA, into the new NAFTA. So just understand, he's railing against NAFTA, but he did NAFTA 2.0. You need the Democrats to be able to make a case against NAFTA 2.0 and say, I'm to the left. I'm actually left on policy, and I'm going to fight for working class people. Instead, what I fear is they might go after Trump and say, Trump pulled out of NAFTA. We shouldn't have pulled out of NAFTA. Oh, why would you do that? In other words, I'm afraid they're going to hand him political victories because his fake populism, instead of saying, hey, Trump is a fake populist, what they're going to say is, he's a real populist and populism is bad. That sums up my fear on this stuff. Is that instead of the Democratic candidate saying, Trump's a fake populist, I'm the real populist, what I'm afraid they'll say is, he is a populist and populism is bad, and that ain't going to work, because what's the opposite of populism? Elitism. So I'm scared to death, because even though his poll numbers are abysmal, I think the Democrats can blow it. And this little clip, even though I just broke it down for you and told you the facts and told you how he's not fighting for the working class and all that stuff, that's not the line I think most of the Democratic candidates would take against him. Because I don't think they know these things I just told you about 93,000 jobs outsourced and the privatization scheme of the infrastructure. I think that they'll just say, no, he is a populist, but populism is bad, so vote for me. Oh, God damn it. We'll see what happens, but the fake populism isn't going anywhere, and the Democrats need to know that.